Don't hate me because I have a haul video. Hi, I'm George the Antique Nomad. Come with me as I wander the country in search of valuable vintage, amazing antiques, and cool collectibles. We'll buy, sell, and trade at antique malls, shops, and shows, estate sales, flea markets, thrift stores, anywhere people go to find really interesting things that just aren't made anymore. So come on, let's go! Welcome viewers, I'm George the Antique Nomad. It's good to be back with you, and those of you who haven't seen me before, I'll just fill you in. I'm an antique dealer. I buy and sell, I do shows, I conduct estate sales, I do appraisals, so I'm into a lot of different things in the antique realm, and usually this time of year I would be doing some big antique shows. Of course we're on hiatus, so I put everything aside, and now I'm going through all my stuff, and I realized I have a whole haul video from the end of the Florida show season and buying to get ready for the show season that hasn't happened, so I guess we'll end up finding another way to sell these things, probably online. But I've got a bunch of new fresh stock, so I wanted to show you what I've come across and tell you a little about it. There's a bunch of little things, and to be honest, I've kind of forgotten what I got, and I just took it out of the box and set it here, so let's look at that really quickly. And we'll just kind of spread this out because it's a hodgepodge of little things. I always enjoy little stuff because it packs easily, it's easy for tourists to take with them, and boy, there's some fun things in here. A little bit of jewelry. This is 1930s. This is a buckle. You see the two parts come together here, and this is what they call pave jewelry, meaning like pavers in a pavement. These are not prong set. They would actually glue the stones in. When costume jewelry was first being made, that was typically how it was done. As a result, you have to watch to make sure the stones haven't fallen out, and these are all in good shape. This is Art Deco. It's worth probably $20 or $25. This piece is even older. This is Victorian, and the blue stone appears to be glass, but it's just beautiful, and it's got this neat brass surround, great little pin. It's missing the back. I send all of my things to Rhinestone Rosie in Seattle. She's on Antiques Roadshow, but she does great jewelry repair, and she's inexpensive. And then this piece here is Czech, I believe. This looks like 1920s or 30s, the way that it's got these emerald cut stones in it. These are glass again, but a nice cross, good color. Again, I think I paid under $5 for all of these jewelry pieces, and they should sell for $20 to $25 each. And then this one, which I need to relink a piece, is a coral double strand that would hang like this. And then this is the old barrel closure. The barrel closures are something you see in the 1940s and 50s. So we'll just put a little finding hook on that. And then this, which I think I got for $5 because it was as is, will be about a $40 piece. So that's pretty cool. There are also a bunch of little charms. I just thought these were fun. They're from a charm bracelet. They're not gold or silver or anything, but they're just cute. Somebody at some point paid $32.95 for Mario Andretti. This is from 1969 when he was the Indy 500 winner. And this coin or token or commemorative piece, I paid $2.50. I think for a race car fan, it's probably worth about $15 to $18. So that was a nice buy. We've got some other fun little stuff. Again, we like little things, especially now when a lot of sales are online. This was $2 and I got it on half off day for $1. This is an old celluloid plastic piece. It is a bookmark, and it's got the 23rd Psalm, so probably used in a Bible. And you can see the type of printing on it. This is going to date to about 1910. And we've got a little pair of spectacles here. These are the old wire type, and sometimes you can find them that match your prescription, and if they have a solid surround, you can actually change the lenses and put your prescription in. So there are people who like these for readers, although a lot of people just set them on a book for decoration now. This is kind of a fun thing. Richfield was a gas station and they sold boron gas, so you take this out and you actually have this thing that you blow up and turn into this balloon, and it was the Earth Moon because it's the 60s and of course the space race is on, so everyone's crazy about space stuff, and this would have been just a giveaway to kids. It was never taken out, but it tells you how to put it together and how to operate it. You basically blow on it and it goes shooting off into space until it falls to the ground and probably broke into a million pieces, so I'm sure there's not many left. This guy is actually out of a Hot Wheels set, And he's one of the pieces that's always missing, and I recognized him in a quarter bin, so I grabbed him because somebody who's got the track likely doesn't have this piece. It would have stood next to the track, and the kids usually broke or lost these. And we've got skeleton keys. I always like to buy skeleton keys because they vary in color and design. The more ornate ones, a lot of people use in jewelry. People use them in crafts. I also have people who look for them for their old furniture. This has a monogram on the back, but the thing I liked about it, and the reason I bought it in spite of being monogrammed, is it's from about 1910, and it's a little jewelry piece, an amulet or a locket that has a horse on it. This sterling spoon also has etching on it. Carlisle, Kentucky. And I believe Carlisle is a very, very little town, so there wouldn't have been very many spoons from there. You can tell with the different shaping in here that this is from about 1900 to 1910 and was probably a grapefruit spoon. They like to have these sort of shapes in citrus because they dug into it a little better. So this piece is a Buttonhook, and this is from a shoe company in St. Louis from between 1900 and 1910. You needed button hooks because those old high Victorian shoes with the buttons were not something you could really lace by yourself. And this one was portable. This was meant for travel, so the shoe company would give it to you so you could walk out the door with it in your pocket, and then when you needed more shoes, you knew where to go. A lot of people like these little advertising pieces from around then. It's worth probably $8 to $10. This little bank, strangely enough, I found in an estate in Florida, but it is from Seattle. Washington Mutual was a tiny little bank that a fellow named Joshua Green started in the Depression, I believe, and it went from a few little branches to a giant nationwide company that unfortunately blew up in the crash of 2008. They were actually forced into receivership against their will, so they are gone now. But this little bank is from their very early days, and I was headed to shows in Washington State and figured it would sell there, and now we'll just send it to someone out there or a bank collector somewhere else. These sell usually around the $20 to $25 range when you see little banks like this. And the idea behind them was it was wide enough to put bills in. You'll notice it doesn't have a key. The bank held on to the keys to these generally. There were some that were issued with keys, but usually the bank kept the key because you weren't supposed to get into it until it was full, and then you took it to the bank and they unlocked it and you put it in your bank account. So it's not easy to find keys for these sometimes. This I just thought was really fun. This was at an estate in Florida. It doesn't look like she's having fun, or he, hard to tell. Gender was pretty vague with children back around 1910 when this was made, but this is a piece of spelter. It's actually a mix of lighter metals that is cast in a mold to look like bronze. And when you take a look at this piece, you'll see some interesting things. The dog is obviously begging. The kid is not very happy about what they're being served. It looks like a moment of less than tranquil bliss in the household, but it's actually pretty funny, and I think someone will get a kick out of it. Again, I think this was only $10 or $15, and it should be about a $40 or $45 piece somewhere, so we'll find someone who likes that too. Also from that estate, and I thought this was great fun. In fact, I'll hold both of these up. It's easier to, well, I better not, that's a gun. Let's start with this one. This is a swagger stick. You'd see guys in parades marching and waving them up and down. You'd also see, because men were shorter back then, it was short enough that you could actually use it as a cane or a walking stick if you weren't my height. And it's going to date to about 1900. I really liked the detail around the top. At first I thought that actually might be the Oddfellows logo, and if it was a fraternal piece it would be worth probably double what it's worth. It turns out it's not Oddfellows, it's just a continuous design that goes all the way around, but it's still neat looking. And this piece, which has many, many, many stacked little round wood pieces to comprise it, and the metal tip is all completely there, which is important to cane and swagger stick collectors, and this should be worth somewhere in the $65 range. The thing I was about to hold up that I decided I shouldn't, because it is a gun, although the safety's on and I know that it is safe. This came from an estate on the way up to my refuge house here, And you'll notice in there, I think they got a good shot of the squirrel on it. So this is actually a squirrel rifle. This would have been some kid's first rifle or something that was used in the Depression era when people were really desperate and needed something that could hunt small game for food. Nowadays, people usually put these things on the wall and hang them there. They're legal to sell in some states, and in other states you have to have a federal permit or a license depending on state laws. So this is something that we'll probably sell here in Kentucky, where it is legal to sell these sorts of firearms. It's walnut stock. It's actually in pretty good shape. I think I paid well under $100 for it. And, you know, these are not meant to be a big destructive weapon. Small as guns go, and the value on these is usually relatively small too, around $150, I suspect. So I don't usually divulge the names of the estates where I buy from, but they sold me this, and this guy's name was right on it. So this is G. David Morris, and 110 someplace was his street. This would have gone on top of the mailbox. It was really popular in the 50s to buy these sort of trim pieces for the tops of gates or mailboxes or that sort of thing, and have your name spelled out. People are a little more private about things than that these days, but it's even got a little reflector in it. So I thought that was fun, and someone could have fun with it as it is or change the letters to spell their name. I figured somebody would find a good use for that. It was only a few dollars. Now, also in this estate in Kentucky were a bunch of local items, and I think people are going to really enjoy these. Old paper ephemera sells to people who are from the places that it came from, generally. And so this is Cumberland Chemical in Hopkinsville, Kentucky, which is local to where I am now. This one's a good one. These all cost $1 or $2 each at this estate. This one is a Masonic directory, and it's from Nashville in 1889. And because it's all of those things, it's going to be a collectible piece. Anything Masonic tends to have a following. And in here they have some great advertising, like there's Benson and Company of Nashville, where you can buy all of your interior decorating things. I imagine that we're now selling all of those things that were purchased there, because this is 100 and some years old. Then there's a bunch of clippings in here too. The Daily New Era is still the Hopkinsville newspaper. The Hopkinsville Kentuckian is long gone, as well as the Daily American. So just a fun group of things. These are some land deeds to various Kentucky area properties. A lot of times there are people who are doing historic research or looking at old plat maps or that sort of thing who love this kind of information. And I think I'll actually try to find where this piece of property is and see if the owner of that piece of property might be interested in it, because it didn't cost me much, and sometimes people are just really glad to see something that relates to where they live now. This item, on the other hand, I will be selling. This is the County of Christian, Kentucky. These were done around the late 1800s and early 1900s in various places. They always have nice marbled paper. This one's a little bit loose, but it is a historical and biographical review. It was very popular around 1900 to do historic reviews of areas and the pioneers, because we were starting to leave the pioneer era pretty much everywhere in the United States by then. And it's going to be full of information, histories, biographies of people in the area. Hopefully there's some good book plates in here. There also are historical notes that were made by people from the family. So we'll have some fun seeing who might have interest in that. And a couple other things I'll show real quickly from that estate, because boy, there's a lot. I am surprised at all this little stuff. I really hadn't looked at this since I bought it, because I was going to take it to a show, so it just been sitting in a box. So let me pour all this out for you, and we'll try to go through the highlights. I might not do every single one, because they're not all super fascinating, but there's a couple good things if I don't break anything. I shoved it all in this potato ricer. I must really have been trying to economize on space. So the old potato ricer's in nice shape from the 50s. This was in a drawer. I got it for $1 because I found it in the drawer of an old piece of furniture. They didn't even know it was there, and they said, "How about $1?" And I said, "Great." So this is Fab, which was a Colgate product from about 1900, 1910. This is also made of celluloid plastic. Celluloid was the first plastic. It came out in the 1850s, and it looks a lot like ivory. It's rather brittle, so you have to be careful of condition. But this has all the information about all the wonderful things Colgate does, and it's a tape measure. And that's the cool part, is you pull it out and you've got your tape, and then you give it a tug and there's a spring, and if the spring still works, which it does on this one, it goes back in. And there are people who collect nothing but tape measures. I've had this one before and I've sold it for either $10 or $12. This is a souvenir of Crothersville, Indiana, and it's a little tin doll buggy. This is going to date to about 1940. You can see the red flowers on the back. There's a dinnerware pattern from the 30s that matches that. And this is just a really cute little thing. This would have been a penny toy in its day, and most of these were crushed, lost, and rusted away long ago. So pieces like this usually sell for $10 to $15 to doll collectors and people who like miniatures. There was a belief in the 70s that perpetual motion was going to be something that we could harness and use to our advantage during the energy crisis. They talked about it a lot. So here's perpetual motion. You give it one little doink and he just spins around and around and around in circles. He will eventually stop, but he goes for a long time. I thought this was very sweet. Again, I'm doing all these little things. Thank goodness I have a cameraman to help me. This is a little Rouge Pot. Women would have put their makeup in here. And because of what it is, even though it looks quite old with the quarters, we know that it really couldn't date much before about 1910 or so. You can see a nice pattern on the back. The reason we know this is because before that period of time, makeup was not something most women wore. If you wore makeup, you were either an actress, a stage performer, or a harlot. That was it, because regular women didn't wear makeup until the First World War, as a general rule. Then all of a sudden, just like in the Second World War with Rosie the Riveter, a bunch of women got called into the workforce. They were under new bright electric lighting, and you could see skin problems and unevenness, and women suddenly started becoming very interested in wearing makeup and covering up any blemishes or flaws they saw. So makeup really became a big thing about 100 years ago. So the estate in Florida had a housekeeper who loved thimbles, and she had some of her grandmother's and her own, and I was able to buy a portion of the collection. The ones I chose were primarily sterling on the one hand here. Sterling was a neat thing if you could afford it back then. It was generally given as a gift, and the reason that you didn't use them much is sterling is kind of soft and you would actually put a needle through it. Now, if you really had money or someone really loved you, they'd get you a gold one because that was really hard and you couldn't put a needle through it. You'll notice that there's different patterning and designs on these. The second one here, the finger I'm moving, actually has cherubs around the base. It may be hard to see because they're so very tiny, but that sort of ornate quality is something that people who collect sterling thimbles seek. On the other hand, if you didn't have a lot of money, you would take a free thimble. There were lots that were done, especially in the Depression, for advertising. So this one here, I'll turn it around, is Singer sewing machines on my pinky. And that makes sense. Of course, you'd be advertising sewing machines if you're using a thimble. The next one is a department store. And then this one in the middle, I'll turn it around, is Hood's Milk. And we see the advertising thimbles pretty frequently, unless they're advertising something really unusual or a place that ended in some glorious blaze or something like that. They're not terribly valuable, but they're interesting and fun for people to collect. Now this one on this finger, on the other hand, is enameled. And again, anything like that that's fancy, these were giftware. You can see on the top that it's also porcelain enamel on the silver. And this would have been a very sweet presentation that was not really intended to be used, and it looks like it never has. This one would probably sell in about the $20 range because it's a little fancier than most. And then I'll show you one more, if I can get these off. Ooh, there we go. This one's fun. This is advertising, but this is an entire sewing kit. This was another form of advertising thimble that you'll see fairly often. This one's actually the Farmers Livestock Union of Sioux City, Iowa, and it even has a 5-digit phone number on it. And you pop this open, and then you've got your little tiny threads on a little spindle here, and your thimble is on top. So these are fun. These usually sell for between $8 and $15 depending on what they're advertising. Okay, let's see what else we have. Boy, lots of fun little things. This was just cute. It's some kid's picture from probably 1930 in a tiny, tiny metal frame. I've never seen a little metal frame like that before, and I just thought that was really sweet. And again, it'd be perfect for a dollhouse collector, someone who likes miniatures. That's just something unusual to me. And again, it was only $1 or $2, so I had to get that. And then this, I can't remember what this is. Let's see. Oh, yeah. Oh, cool. Okay. These are Bakelite dice. But these are actually for playing games that are related to high card draw, high card poker, that sort of thing. Because you've got nothing but face cards and tens on here, and then you roll it, and that's basically the hand you get. It was a way to gamble that was a little more discreet. Bakelite plastic. This is going to date to about 1940. These would have been given to servicemen for something to do to while away time overseas. I also know that they were taken by professional gamblers around because they were kind of easy to hide. There would be illegal gambling, for example, in a lot of the major cities. That was a big pastime, and they needed something they could shove in their pocket really quickly. That's why it's not a deck of cards. This was a very discreet way of doing that sort of thing. This is filthy. Ooh, boy, yeah. One thing about fresh haul is sometimes you get fresh dirt. Obviously, these days we're cleaning everything before we put it out to sell. This is a Dresden china. Dresden sounds like Germany, but Dresden was actually an American company, again, sort of like Willits and Lennox used the Belique mark. Dresden was a place known for fine porcelain, so this earthenware maker in America decided to call themselves Dresden because it sounded good. This is transferware, and the really cute thing, you've got the Gibson girl with her suitor, and this is advertising the First National Bank of Hopkinsville, Kentucky again. So when you get these that are souvenirs to local places, that makes them more collectible. It's what we call cross-collectible. So you have people who like Gibson girl designs, and then you also have people who would collect from the place that they're from. I stuffed this with something so you could see what it really is. This is Tom's Peanut Butter Log, and this is a 1 cent. A consignor friend of mine in Florida gave this to me at the last show to sell. And these counter jars are from the 1950s. There are reproductions in later issues, so you really want to look at the logos. And again, check to see, does it have any wear? Does it look like it sat on a store counter? Does it feel greasy like new glass? Especially heavily reproduced are the old Planters Peanuts jars, so you want to be really careful about those before you buy. If you're paying a big price like it's an old one, make sure it is. For those of you missing sports, we've got the Steve Largent Wheaties box. Steve Largent was one of the NFL's all-time receiving greats, and he played for the Seattle Seahawks for a long time, and this would have been when he was still playing for them. Cereal boxes that are famous sports people usually go for about $10 each now. And then this, which was 95 cents at a thrift store, is a glow-in-the-dark version of the Mummy. Now, this isn't wildly old, but a lot of these 1980s, 90s collectible things based on pop culture and movies and characters are still collectible today. A lot of people who couldn't afford one at the time now are a little older and they want them. So we do have customers for this, and this is actually a digital watch that glows in the dark. I'm not sure what that's worth. I'm going to have to look that up. This here is a candy container. Second World War, you can see it says Army Bomber on the wing. The bottom would have originally had a piece of cardboard or a metal insert, depending on what type it was, and pellet candy would have been in there. So you bought the glass, and then you got some really horrible candy that didn't taste very good, and when it was gone, you had this left. And there's a whole ton of different designs of these. I liked this one because it is a war era motif, and there are people who will collect it for that, as opposed to just glass collectors or candy container collectors. And so I think I paid $6 or $7. A lot of them only go for that, but I think this one goes for about $15. Now we're going to get into something that's a true antique, and I thought this was very pretty. Some people love Majolica, some love it less, but I thought this butterfly motif really crossed over into a lot of collecting areas, and this metal frame around it is rather unusual. This piece is German. It doesn't say on the back, because most Majolica was made before 1891, and until 1891 we didn't have any laws that said they had to put the country of origin on things they sent to the United States. So this piece is going to date probably to the 1880s. I thought it had a nice glaze. I like the naturalistic motif. This makes it unusual. I got a discount on this, but it wasn't cheap. I think I paid $35, but this should be, because of the extra added interest with the good motif and this basket frame, this should potentially be a $75 piece of Majolica. Another consignor right before I left Florida gave me this to sell. This is a Russian lacquer box. Usually these are based on fairy tales. You have the sleigh in the snow and all the minarets in the background. It's very pretty. It could use a little wash. And somewhere on here it probably has the name of the city it was painted in very small letters, but I can't see it on here. Again, I think it needs to be cleaned. And you open it up and it has the red enamel interior. There's a couple of really good reference books on this. I did a video at the West Palm Beach show, and you can look at that and it'll actually show a copy of one of the books that's really a great reference on these. So if you get interested in them, it's worth studying them. It's a really fascinating history. Another local piece, again, I expected to have a show in Nashville, and it was canceled, of course. The big spring extravaganza. Hopefully we'll be back by fall or next spring. But this is a piece of local interest that's actually from Lexington, Kentucky. This is a spike from the first railroad west of the Alleghenies, laid in 1823. It was then taken up and moved from the center to the edge of the city. Somebody, when they were pulling up the tracks, got a hold of these probably in the 1930s or 40s and saved them as memorabilia, which is really cool because I wouldn't be able to verify a story like that, but the fact that it has this information on it, I was able to trace, and it turns out, yes, there are other ones, and it was deliberately done, so we know the story is true. Lots of things on paper labels that are stuck to antiques are not true stories, so just because you pick something up at an estate sale or a thrift store and you see an old paper label in it from Grandma that says, this is a very valuable teapot, does not necessarily mean it's true, because grandmas lie to their kids sometimes. They really want you to love the stuff, so sometimes the stories get a little bigger. So check the story out before you buy. This set here is Wedgwood. The green color is a little different than the blues you often see. The Wedgwood Made in England mark is the 20th century mark. I believe this set dates to about 1950s or 60s in this color, so I think it's more recent. But it's nice because it's got all the little demi-tasse cups and saucers, and the price on that set, I'm selling it for a consignor. I've got to look that one up. I believe it sells for between $100 and $125 though. These are Fenton hobnail. It's not marked because there's nowhere to put a mark on these, but you can tell by the pointiness of the hobs. Notice how they come to a pretty stern point. They are not rounded at all. That's a good indication of Fenton, as well as the quality of the glass. It's thick, it's heavy, it's good quality. You can't really see anything through it, so that gives you an indication. These were only $1 a piece. I'm sure that they're worth probably $6 or $7 a piece, so I figured they were worth picking up. The very last day before the lockdown, I went to the Red Door Antique Mall in Eddyville, Kentucky. There's a video about that you can watch, and this is one of the things I bought. So I talked about her there. She's a Carl Romanelli designed Metlocks piece, but I wanted to show the bottom because this has a design patent on it. It doesn't actually have the Metlocks mark, so you need to look at that ink stamp. Another interesting thing about this one that will tell you if you didn't know is there is a mold number on the back, which is a kind of hard thing to spot. But if you look in the old Metlocks reference books, you'll be able to reference them that way as well. It may be too hard to see. The detail in these are very subtle. There's drapery. She's not nude. She's actually wearing an outfit. This is the way that it drapes. You can see the lines in the gown. She's holding up the vessel. Really nicely made wear. These were made right about the beginning of World War II. And let's see what else. I wanted to show this because I think it's weird, and I like weird. And this is strange to me. On the back it says Young's Hotel, February 25th, 1909, which is great because we know when it's from. It's got a really cool dragon handle. That would have been an Art Nouveau motif. It's very straight-sided, like a lot of vessels were about 1910, and it's for the New England Sanitary Club. That says on the side, "Old friends we are, may we be friends forever." Now, I'm not sure what a sanitary club did. It might have actually been about getting sanitation and sewage and proper garbage disposal and things like that into major cities, because we take for granted that that stuff happens, but that wasn't the way it was in cities. That's why a lot of people didn't live in cities until the 20th century. They were not always a very safe or nice place to live. So we'll have to find out more about the Sanitary Club. It sounds like a very boring club to be a member of, but I'm sure that it was important at the time. What's cute about this, you see the skier, it's great graphics, it's obviously a gift box. The gift box was done because it's the Depression and we have something rather ordinary in it, but we want to jazz it up, so we give it a really cool box. You open it up and is it related to skiing? No, it's actually a pair of travel brushes, the prophylactic travel brushes. They have a nice Art Deco design and the chrome is cool, and they haven't been used at all. This would have been something for a man to take with him traveling, and they're just neat looking, and they have the prophylactic. They made toothbrushes as well. We think of prophylactics as meaning something a little different these days, but the term actually has to do with preventing disease, so kind of timely. 1950s kitty cat hat pad, what can I say? People love cats. I saw this, it was $1, I had to buy it. Obviously handmade, and he's just cute. This here, if you see the little logo, is the old Western Airlines logo, but this is actually something that was done for their 50th anniversary, which was in 1976. And they spent money on this. This was for the first class passengers. It was made in Japan, but it is porcelain. Western Airlines is marked on the bottom. It's got the little handhold. It's for your cream. If you were in first class, you would be served this. Within a couple of years, the airlines were deregulated and the prices came way down and they weren't making money anymore, so they couldn't make fancy tableware for first class. So airline porcelain and pieces that were used for first class service that are vintage are very collectible now. In fact, airline memorabilia from extinct airlines in general is quite popular. Western Airlines was very well known. They were based in Salt Lake and they covered the entire West Coast, so a lot of collectors for this out there. This is a cool example of a Vernon Kilns plate. And Vernon Kilns was out of Los Angeles. They were really big in the 30s and 40s and 50s, and then they merged with Metlocks in the early 60s. But they did tons of these plates for different locations all over the country. Every state, lots of different tourist attractions. They did them for political campaigns. And this one's cool because being Kentucky, of course, we have horses, horses, horses everywhere, and tobacco, tobacco, tobacco. And then we also have the Old Kentucky Home in Bardstown, the Gold Depository at Fort Knox, and the Natural Bridge, which I've been to, which is really beautiful. Kentucky is surprising. If you haven't been here, there's actually a lot of really beautiful scenery and interesting places that you would not imagine would be here. Once you get here, you find out it's a much different place than the stereotypes. It's really quite fascinating. On the back, it's got Kentucky and then Vernon Kilns, USA. These usually sell for, between $8 and $15 depending on the attraction. There are certain things that are a lot more expensive depending on where you are and the subject matter. There was one done with Boeing airplanes in the Second World War that's worth about $50 in Seattle, for example. And then I bought gloves because, well, I got the idea that gloves may become a thing again. It might be that we're all wearing gloves for a while, so I thought, well, pick up gloves when you see them, especially when you find a cute set with a bunch of fringe that have never ever been used before. It's actually got the original liner from about 1970. You can tell by the colors. They're fringed. It's got the original tags. I mean, these are mint. I like buying anything that's mint that's 50 years old. And there's some nice tooled leather ones. These are also 1970s. These are usually selling in the $15 range. I suspect they might get a little more expensive because I do think there's going to be demand for gloves. Boy, this is a lot more stuff than I thought, so I guess we'll have more fun, won't we? Thanks for joining me again in the fun and fascinating antique community here where online meets the real world. Please click the subscribe button below, click the bell to be notified when new videos upload, leave a comment below, and hit thumbs up to like this video. Links to our online social media daily posts and our items for sale are in the description. This is George at the Antique Nomad. Bye for now.